And hello. I want to read some stories today, and I've got a few picked out here. Before we start, though, if you're wondering why I'm wearing this goofy-looking headset, it's because this was a very impromptu thing I decided to do. Didn't really have time to get out and get a proper microphone. This is the best thing I had, so we will all make do, I suppose. We read a little bit of Jane Hissey yesterday. I introduced her yesterday. She's a British author, has wonderfully detailed illustrations, and I love it so much I want to read another one today. This one is called Little Bear's Trousers. The sun shone through the window and woke Little Bear. What a lovely morning, he said to himself. I'll do something different today. He jumped down from the bed, took off his pajamas, and looked for his trousers. He looked on the chair where he'd left them, and he looked on the floor under the chair. And then he looked through the chest of drawers in case they were there. But they weren't. They were nowhere. But they must be somewhere, said Little Bear. Trousers don't disappear. I'll go and ask Old Bear. He'll know where they are. Old Bear was already enjoying the sun in his deck chair. I haven't seen your trousers, I'm afraid, he said. But Camel was around here earlier. Perhaps she knows where they are. Oh dear, said Camel, when Little Bear found her a few minutes later. I did find them. I thought they were a pair of hump warmers, and I tried them on to see if they fitted me. They did keep my humps quite warm, but the air came down the tops, so I decided these were better. And she showed Little Bear two very smart bobble hats, one for each hump. I gave the old hump warmers to Sailor to use as sails for his boat. Jump on my back, and let's see if we can find him. Little Bear scrambled up, and they galloped off in the direction of the bathroom. They said they were going to use them as sails, but they don't appear to be sails on Sailor's boat. Sailor was looking after the boats and ducks in the bathroom. I did use them as sails, he said, but they looked too much like trousers. That's because they are trousers, said Little Bear crossly. Where are they now? I gave them to Dog to keep his bones in, said Sailor. Sorry, Little Bear. We'd better hurry. He might be anywhere by now. Dog was happily burying his bones in flower pots when Little Bear found him. My bones kept falling through the two-bone bone holder, he said. Two-bone bone holder? Cried Little Bear in dismay. Oh, Dog, can't you recognize trousers when you see them? Oh dear, said Dog. I do feel silly. I gave them to Rabbit. He said he needed a skiing hat, and your trousers looked just perfect. I am sorry. Whee! Cried Rabbit, as he shot past Little Bear a few minutes later, skiing down the banister on 2 lolly-stick skis. He didn't have Little Bear's trousers on his head now. But I did have them earlier, he explained when Little Bear caught up with him. They made a lovely rabbit hat, with plenty of room for my ears. But they slipped over my eyes, and I crashed. So I decided it was safer without them. I gave them to Zebra to carry her building bricks in. Zebra was building herself a house when Little Bear arrived. But his trousers were nowhere to be seen. I wondered what those were, she said. They were terribly useful. I tied up the legs with string, put them on my back, and carried all these bricks here in them. But when I had enough bricks for my house, I gave them to Duck to use as a flag for his sand castle. I am sorry, Little Bear. I didn't know they belonged to you. Duck was in the sand tray, looking sadly at the castle he'd made. There was no trouser flag at the top now. I did use the flag Zebra gave me, he sighed. But Bramwell Brown came and said it was just what he needed, urgently, in the kitchen. He gave me this paper flag to use instead. Never mind, said Little Bear with a sigh, feeling quite glad that his trousers were not covered in sand. The kitchen was in a terrible muddle. There were bowls and spoons and eggs and flour, and in the middle of it all sat Bramwell Brown. We'll show you that in a minute. Let's take a look at our sandcastle here first. And the kitchen. I think we've located our trousers. He had Little Bear's trousers, but, oh dear, he'd filled them with pink icing and was busy decorating a huge cake with them. It's a special occasion cake, said Bramwell. Excuse me. And you have to put icing on special occasion cakes. I thought I could do 2 stripes at once with these icing bags. But they're not icing bags. They are my trousers, sniffed Little Bear, trying hard not to cry. I thought I'd seen them before, said Bramwell Brown. A little dark. Let's see if I can get a good look here. Don't worry, Little Bear, said Old Bear, who always arrived at the right moment. The icing will wash out, and they'll look good as new. What's the special occasion cake for? Asked Little Bear, feeling a bit more cheerful at this news. Well, I didn't really know, said Bramwell. I just felt like making one. Old Bear thought hard. Perhaps it ought to be a Trousers Day cake, he suggested helpfully. So that's what Bramwell Brown wrote on the cake. Twice. Once with the icing from the left trouser leg, and once with the icing from the right trouser leg. It said, Happy Trousers Day, in the middle, and there was a trousers pattern all round the edge. So I'll wash it out at the bottom. You can see that trousers pattern there. Duck washed Little Bear's trousers and dried them next to the cooker. Then all the toys sat down to enjoy a piece of cake and to celebrate the day Little Bear lost and found his trousers. And ever since Trousers Day, Little Bear has always slept with his trousers under his pillow. Nobody will find them there, he says. The end. There's just this wit and sort of subtle humor that you get in these British books that I don't see a whole lot of these days. But I'm not here to talk about that. I do, before we move on, I want to show you something here. This has nothing to do with reading at all. But I found this the other day. Well, not this. This is just a penny. Normal old penny, dated 2019. And then I found this. That's a penny too. This is dated 1943. You've got this penny over here, which is what we're used to for pennies, and then we've got this penny over here from 1943. I don't know if that's something anyone wants to try to find out what happened in 1943 that pennies looked like this. Just something to look for on your own time. All right. I would like to read. Well, let's get to that later. I'd like to pick something out of Childcraft again today. Just a quick overview. We talked about this yesterday. Childcraft is an older sort of encyclopedia type volume for kids. They write stories about famous historical figures. And today, what don't we read? Yesterday we read about an author, Robert Louis Stevenson. Today let's read about... Let's read about an athlete today. Where is this one? There he is. Okay. Some of you might know this. If you don't, well, I've got a surprise for you then. This is called the 4-minute mile. The rain had stopped, and the wind was slackening a little, but the track was still a damp bed of cinders. In a few minutes, the mile race between Oxford University and the English Amateur Athletic Association would begin. Roger stood under the stands, looking out at the track. He had an important decision to make, and he had to make it quickly. For months, Roger had been working and training for this race. He had hoped that this would be his chance to break the 4-minute mile. No one had ever been able to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. But Roger had a plan. He was convinced that breaking the 4-minute mile would have to be a team effort. His teammates, Chris Brasher and Chris Chataway, had been training with him for this race. With their coach, they had worked out a plan which, if followed to the split second, would allow Roger to run the mile in less than 4 minutes. Both Chataway and Brasher were fast runners, but neither man had the endurance necessary to run the full mile at top speed. They had agreed to pace Roger in this race. With Roger right behind him, Brasher would set the speed during the first half mile. Then Chataway would take over. At the last quarter mile, Chataway would drop back, and Roger would make a final thrust to finish the mile in less than 4 minutes. Roger had planned to try to break the record today, but everything seemed to be working against him. The experts said the 4-minute mile could only be broken under certain ideal conditions. The track would have to be dry and hard so the runner's spikes could dig into it. There could be no wind to slow the runner, and the temperature would have to be mild. Today, it was cold, wet, and windy. It's the perfect day not to break the 4-minute mile, Roger thought as he gazed at the track. And yet, Roger knew that he was in good running condition. His friends were all set to pace him. And if he did fail, he could always try again some other day. 5 minutes before the start of the race, Roger made his decision. "We'll try it," he said. He shook hands with his coach and jogged out to the starting line with Brasher and Chataway behind him. They took their places in the line with the other runners and waited for the bark of the gun. The gun fired. A false start. Roger trotted back to the line, took his position, and waited. Again, the gun cracked. Roger sprang from the starting line. He gave himself up to the joy of running. His feet seemed to have wings. His body went through the motions it had been trained to make. Brasher was setting the pace, moving ahead of Roger. Roger knew that he must run the half mile in less than 2 minutes if he was to attain his goal. At the half mile, the time was under 2 minutes, right on schedule. Then Brasher dropped back and Chataway took over. They were now running the third quarter. Roger knew he had to conserve his strength for the final thrust. At the same time, he had to maintain the steady, heart-pounding pace, a pace which would bring him to the tape in what he hoped would be that thrilling fraction of a second short of 4 minutes. With Chataway still leading, they passed the three-quarter point in 3 minutes and 5 seconds. The last stretch of track lay in front of them, and as Chataway fell behind, Roger knew he was truly on his own now. Each breath tore at his lungs. Flames seemed to be consuming his heels and ankles. He thought he had no more strength left, nothing more to go on. He lengthened his stride for the finishing plunge. His head rolled back, his neck arched, the cords of his neck standing out like ropes. He was nearing the finish line. Roger gasped for the last necessary breath and tore through the tape, which in the final seconds had seemed to move away from him rather than come closer. And then it was over. Roger fell almost unconscious into the arms of his coach. Brasher and Chataway came up to take their places at Roger's side. Waves of pain swept his entire body. He strained to breathe. A hush closed over the onlookers. Had Roger made it? And then the announcer's voice came over the loudspeaker. "A new world record has been set. The time, 3 minutes and..." A great roar from the throats of the crowd swallowed up the rest of the announcer's words. The 4-minute mile had been broken. Roger had run the mile in 3 minutes, 59 and 4/10 seconds. Little epilogue for you. Some of you may have heard of him. Roger in this story was Roger Bannister, a British medical student. This story took place in Oxford, England in 1954. Runners had been trying to run the mile in less than 4 minutes for a long time, but none had been able to do it. Many experts thought that it was impossible. Some felt that it could be done, but only under ideal conditions. Yet, in spite of the bad weather, Roger Bannister became the first man to break the 4-minute mile. Roger retired from running competition in 1955 to practice medicine. Since then, several runners have run the mile in less than 4 minutes. But Roger Bannister proved it was possible by doing it first. Here are some pictures of a tired but happy winner. That's Roger crossing the finish line. And you can kind of see how exhausted he is from these pictures here. He's so exhausted, he's got people up there supporting him so he doesn't fall over. Roger Bannister, first man to break the 4-minute mile. All right. Another picture book. I like this one just for its absurdity. We tell you how gravity works in school, but in this book, it's run by a machine, controlled by the gravity company. The gravity company. Cayuga Ridge has always been a small, quiet town. On the main street are the Cayuga Ridge Laundry, the Cayuga Ridge Bakery, the Cayuga Ridge Pizza Parlor, the Cayuga Ridge Library, the Cayuga Ridge Courthouse, with the statues of Cayuga Ridge heroes, and the Cayuga Ridge Gravity Company. At the Gravity Company, Mortimer makes sure the machine always works. Mortimer watches the dials and gauges. Mortimer pulls the levers, throws the switches, and pushes the buttons. It is Mortimer's job to see that the people of Cayuga Ridge always have enough gravity. Mortimer makes sure the Gravity Company runs well. I wonder if that's classified as a public utility. Every day at noon, Mortimer switches the gravity machine to automatic. He puts on his rubber boots, his jacket, and a hat. Mortimer always grabs an umbrella, just in case it rains. Every day at noon, Mortimer goes next door to have lunch. Every day at noon, while Mortimer is next door having lunch, Gloria, the cleaning woman, enters the Gravity Company. Every day at noon, Gloria brings in her mops and buckets, brooms and brushes, rags and soap to clean the Gravity Company. A Gravity Company runs well when it is clean. One day at noon, while Mortimer was next door having lunch and Gloria was using her mops and buckets, brooms and brushes, rags and soap to clean the Gravity Company, something happened. The handle of Gloria's mop hit the automatic switch on the gravity machine. A Gravity Company does not run very well when the gravity has been turned off. All over Cayuga Ridge, things began to happen. Without gravity, nothing had weight. Without gravity, there was nothing to keep things from floating away. At the Cayuga Ridge Park, the baseball game had to be stopped. Ham Sam had knocked the ball into outer space. Ham Sam did not smile very often, but he smiled at that. A little hard to see, but right up there. At the ranch on the edge of town, Cowboy Hiram was riding Crazy Daisy, the wildest bronc around. Crazy Daisy kicked Cowboy Hiram into the clouds. Now that there was no gravity, Cowboy Hiram could ride a cloud. He liked riding a cloud better than riding Crazy Daisy. At their car wash, the Squirrel Scouts found cleaning was much easier without gravity. They could pick the cars up, turn them around, and scrub them all over. Major Rush found he could cut the lawn with his helicopter. This worked very well, except in the corners of the yard, which were not reached by the helicopter blades. Someone got a haircut. The Cayuga Ridge window washers were happy. They could reach every window of every house and every window of every building in Cayuga Ridge without a ladder. What would you do if there was no gravity, at least for a while? What would you do? At the Cayuga Ridge Fun Park, the roller coasters rolled off the tracks and sailed over the Cayuga Ridge skyline. It was the best ride anyone had ever had. I wonder what the deal is with this goose-looking thing up here. Why is it wearing a suit and a hat? All right. At the Cayuga Ridge Zoo, the keepers played catch with the rhinos. The elephants giggled as they became the largest yo-yos in the world. There are your rhinos. Look at them using the trunk as a string. At the Mackinsons' house, it was wash day. Mrs. Mackinson started to hang her laundry out to dry and found that she could hang all her clothes out at once. At the Cayuga Ridge Airport, airplanes didn't have to land. They stopped in the middle of the air to let the people out. There's another dressed-up goose. The Cayuga Ridge River flowed out of its banks and made its way over the land. Plants, animals, fish, and people rolled right along with the river. At the Cayuga Ridge Pizza Parlor, the pizza man was tossing his pizza dough into the air. He was about to make a pizza for Mortimer. The pizza dough for Mortimer's pizza floated up out the window and clear out of sight. Mortimer realized that something was very wrong. All the way up there. Mortimer rushed back to the gravity company and found the automatic switch in the off position. He always knew what to do in an emergency. How many emergencies have they had? Anyway, Mortimer took hold of the gravity lever, and slowly, very slowly, moved it to the on position. Slowly, very slowly, everything all over Cayuga Ridge came floating down. Mortimer's pizza dough, Mrs. Mackinson's laundry, the window washers, the roller coasters, the clean cars all came floating down to Earth. The only thing that didn't come down was Ham Sam's baseball, which is still in outer space, bouncing around off satellites and making that static in your television set. Do you still get static in your television set? These days in Cayuga Ridge, cars are washed in the normal way and zoo animals aren't played with like toys. The Cayuga River stays in its banks, and the roller coasters stay on track. Mortimer makes sure the gravity company runs well. And Cayuga Ridge is still a small, quiet town. Might be hard to see, but if you look on right about here, those are birds making that little formation there. Oh, and one more duck with shoes on, or goose. Duck, goose, I don't know. The end. All right, until next time, tell me about this 1943 penny. I'm curious. Let me know. I'll see you later.